What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm super excited to start this series. This is my beginner filmmaker series. So the first video is going to be about writing. Whenever you're trying to go into film, the number one thing you need to understand is that there are tools to our trade. So there's cameras, there's lighting, there's all kinds of things. But the most important thing is story. If you have a terrible story, or if you don't understand what the goal of your film is, then you're not going to have a great project. For example, a lot of people are super unhappy with the major studio films right now, and the reason why is because they're prioritizing profits over good storytelling. If your film has a bad story or a bad script, it's probably not going to do very well. So in this first video, we're going to be talking about beat boards. So the way this process is going to work, we're going to basically make a short film together, and I'm going to take you guys throughout every single step of the way, and by the end, we'll have a short film. So the first thing is beat boards. And so what this does is it allows you to take your concept, your idea, and put it down on essentially a sticky note. So in front of me here, I have Final Draft. Final Draft is the software I use for all of my writing needs. This is just the software I like to use. There are other programs out there that does the exact same thing. I'll leave a link to a couple of them down in the description below. But for the purposes of this series, I'm going to be using Final Draft for the writing process. So first thing I'm going to do is create a new beat board. And then another thing we'll do, just go ahead and save that now so that we have it somewhere. I'll put it here and I'll call it tutorial just because. And so now here we can put our sticky notes and kind of draft out some ideas. So we know that there's going to be limitations and whatnot, and I want to go ahead and just put some of those down. I want to put down some constraints. You know, what can we do, what can't we do? So I'm going to put down constraints. So I know that for this story, and this is just a personal thing, this is not something that is industry standard by any means, but something I know for fact is that I'm going to have one actor for this. So we need to have one actor, which means one character. And I know that I'm gonna be the only crew, so it needs to be static shots pretty much for as much as possible. Minimal audio because I cannot operate the camera and do audio at the same time. I need to, be able to focus on the talent and whatnot. And this is, again, if you're doing something super simple. This is if you're going to be doing a solo filmmaker kind of thing, just an actor and a director. Now, if you have a budget, you might be able to go out and do a bunch of different things, but for the purposes of this tutorial and this series, we're just gonna keep it simple. Okay, so I put a couple other constraints there, and now we can move on to our basic idea. So let's go for the basic idea. We'll go for summary first. Now, before we even write a summary, I want to connect these two so that we have kind of a tree going on here. We know constraints lead to our summary. Now, this is storytelling 101, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen people either ignore this or just straight up forget to do this, but there's a story arc. You have to go from one place and arrive somewhere, and you want to do that with your audience. So, every story has a beginning, which we're going to put all the way here to the left. It has a climax or middle, and then it has the end. And in between, you have your rising actions, and you have your falling actions. Now, this is something that I really hope that you guys take with you, because I cannot tell you how many times I've watched a film and you have a really good beginning, you have a really good rising action, and then there's a great climax and it just concludes. Or sometimes there isn't really a good conclusion to begin with. So, I just want to have this kind of process so that we have some form of like, if this, then that. So I'm just going to connect all of these really quickly. For the summary, I want to do something that is good for one character. So I'm going to make the topic mental health, because you can it's really relevant nowadays, and you can do something simple with one actor showing their mental state. And let's do a basic storyline, and we're gonna say a man dealing with depression tries to find happiness with himself. Something super simple, right? It might not seem simple at first, but we're gonna draft that out. So let's draft this out. Let's make this a little bit neater as well. But let's draft this out, right? How can we, have this kind of story? So at the very beginning, we could have someone, and remember, within our constraints, this is something I like to do, is writing within my known constraints. I don't want to write something and then go out and try and make it, and then I can't make it because I don't have the resources, the people, etc. So at the beginning, we could have character sitting at a memorial or grave site. Now, there are public memorials, there are graveyards that will allow you to film there and whatnot, so this is a pretty easy thing to achieve. The rising action could be character having mental breakdown. The climax could be, or it could be character finding out they lost a friend. Character having a mental breakdown for the climax, and that could also be a really good challenge for the actor, especially if you get a volunteer, which is probably what we're going to do later on. If you get a volunteer, it will challenge them and it'll make it fun for them as well. Falling actions, character looks for ways to productively express his emotions and feelings. And then the ending, the character revisits the grave or memorial and says his final goodbye. Now, this story can be done in a couple different ways, and we'll get into that whenever we go over the pre-production phase of this entire series. But what this does is it allows us to take our concept and just put it down. So we have our beats, we know what the constraints are, we have a basic summary, a very basic beat line. Now here's another thing that I like to do, and I encourage you guys to do this as well. So whenever you have the beginning, rising action, climax, falling actions, and the end, or I should actually rename that to resolution, because that's what it is. There's a conflict and there's a resolution. So what I like to do is I like to do scene planning, right? So we can put here scene 1 could be a wide shot showing character in memorial sitting down. And I can connect that as well to again have a graph showing where everything connects and whatnot, which I think is very important. And at this point we could roll a title screen, we could do a number of things. And then we can go into scene 2. We could have it void of color, flashback scene, and we can also have the climax, which is the mental breakdown. So the mental breakdown could be a number of things. It could be the character crying. It could be the character breaking something. So we could, for example, say character is crying after the phone call and begins pacing around. And then we can have a fourth scene here to kind of extend that out. Scene 4, character goes on a drive somewhere and then breaks something. We don't know what that is because this is a very basic beat board. And then the falling action could be, scene 5, character looks at old photos of him and his friend, listens to music, and begins painting. Something random, right? But we want the character to find something productive to do for his mental health. We can also have a scene where the character is working out and hypes himself up. you know, you can go anywhere with that. And then the resolution could be character revisits memorial, grave site, and leaves fresh flowers. And we could really do something interesting where we have flowers that are kind of wilted in the beginning to kind of foreshadow that he's not feeling well. He's kind of lost any sense of care for anything really. And then throughout the story, then the color comes back into the film and whatnot. Like I said, we can go through that in the pre-production phase, but this is just for beats. So now let's connect all of this. And now that we have some of the details on how the story is going to go, we can go into the writing process, which will be another video. But before we do that, I want to do one last thing, and I want to put down the character list. And so we're going to put here character list and traits. And we can put that within our constraints. So that way we are following the constraints, but also expanding like who is this person. So the character could be ex-military, for example, and that could be the friend that he's heard, you know, got killed or whatnot. It could be from suicide, it could be from a number of things, but at least this way we know that there's a little bit of background. And we can even show the character in his military uniform, but that's pre-production. These are all ideas, and we can put these ideas into beats, which we'll do momentarily, but first let's go through the traits. So ex-military, built, and we can say that he has a very sad kind of look to him, sad face or look to him, tired. We can say that he dresses modestly. You could really go into this, but I'm just trying to keep it simple. And by doing this, we have some character traits. We could say he's got blue eyes. We could say he's got blonde hair. We could say he's 5'6". And as for whether or not we're gonna actually find somebody that fits these details, it just depends on who we can find to volunteer. But these are just traits that we have, so we have some kind of baseline. Tech specs. So this is gonna be for the technology that's involved. We know that we're gonna shoot this on the Zcam E2 S6, primarily sticks, tripod shots. We know that we're gonna shoot it in Z-Log 2 color space. We know we're gonna do cinema, or we're gonna do 5.8K ProRes RAW. That's gonna be the codec and the resolution. 23.976 frame rate. And 1/48th shutter speed. And we wanna shoot a lot of these very intimately. And when I say intimately, I mean, this is a very delicate topic. Lens choice means a lot here, because whenever you're showing a wide or close-up shots, these shots can really help tell the story. And so this is the cinematographer in me. Now, if you are only writing something, then tech specs isn't gonna be something that you have to worry about. But putting this all here, since I'm a single writer, director, producer, editor, all that good stuff, because I'm a solo filmmaker, I can put these here so that whenever I reference this later on, I can essentially have a guide, and it's all pre-planned. So 1/48th shutter speed, and I think the rest of this is pretty much good. And I don't have to connect this to anything since it's on its own. So now we have our basic beat board. And we did all this within, you know, a couple minutes, and that's really how easy it is. Whenever people say that to become a filmmaker doesn't require school, doesn't require connections, just go out there and shoot something, that really is the truth. You really can just put something together, go out there and make it. So this is part 1, video 1, beat boards, and I really hope that you guys found this helpful, and I will see you guys back for the writing portion.